G'day team, Tom from Spinifex Energy speaking. I've been getting a lot of questions lately from landlords and from tenants as electricity prices are going through the roof here in Brisbane and across the nation in 2023. We've obviously had a bit of an energy crisis to deal with. Some of that has levelised at the moment, but we're still seeing very, very high electricity costs, which is filtering through to operational expenses, and everyone's trying to scramble to try and do something about that. So, timely blog post, thought I'd quickly chuck it up here to explain, I guess, there are benefits both to tenants and landlords that can be found in installing solar on commercial buildings, and often there's a win-win scenario where both parties can benefit. We've installed solar on commercial properties where the landlord's just paid for the system outright, put it on there purely for the tenant's benefit. We've had systems where the tenant has paid for the system outright purely for their own benefit, where their lease is long enough that the payback period was attractive enough on the solar system that paid off in 3, 4, 5 years, and their lease is 10 years with options. Very happy to go and purchase it and keep the benefits of all of the savings of that solar system. And then the third option, I guess, is where the landlord either gets a roof lease from the tenant or from a third party as some sort of income for the capital outlay of the solar system, or they themselves are charging the tenant under some sort of charging arrangement, either for leasing of the solar asset or for selling electricity. The solar electricity produced at a reduced rate from what they're paying for electricity from the grid. So look, I'll just quickly rip through this. If you want to jump on our website, spinifexenergy.com.au, there's a resources tab and you'll be able to find all of our blog posts, including this one. Starting for the benefits to begin with, and I just basically touched on that. At this stage of the game, operational expenditure, tenants are paying electricity, cost of electricity is going up. Solar's one surefire way of reducing the tenants' electricity bills, especially tenants that are working office hours. So sun comes up, sun goes down. Solar's working while the tenant's at work, and this is reducing their daily energy usage. So obviously that's the very first benefit that the tenant can get. Number two is sheltering them against volatility in energy prices, which have been fluctuating a lot lately. Now, larger tenants obviously contract their electricity rates for 3 years. Well, you can also install a solar system and contract that electricity rate, buying that solar electricity for a longer period. If price volatility is something that's affecting your business adversely. Government-backed incentives, look, that's a post for another time as well, another video I suppose, but we get the question every time we talk to someone about solar and whether there still is government incentives for installing solar, and the answer is yes, and that is whether the tenant is buying the solar system or whether that's the landlord. The government incentives are still there. We've got 8 years to run on the STC credits. So again, there is another post on our resources tab if you want to read through exactly how they work, but short answer is yes, they are there. Finally, the ESG alignment and brand enhancement. So more and more businesses are developing and working on an ESG strategy to improve their environmental impacts of operating their business, and solar's a surefire way, I guess, to improve your ESG strategies, and we're seeing that across the board with lots of our clients at the moment. So the benefits for the landlord, enhanced property value. So one way of thinking about that, I suppose, is straight away, if you're buying an asset and putting it on your roof, you're improving the property and you're value adding. Second to that, if you do charge an income on that solar system, whether that's charging for the electricity or charging a lease, you've got an income there that you can add to the revenue of the property, and it may have a different cap rate, but there is a cap rate associated to that solar. So if you say you're making 15 to 50 grand off a solar system and that property is valued at a 6% cap rate, you're actually adding significant value to that property by putting that solar system on there and generating some income from it. Investing in your tenant. So often we're finding landlords investing in solar in the front end of a development or a build and looking to secure better tenants for a longer commitment. One example of that is this property in Eagle Farm. This was 3 separate tenants landlord or the developer put these solar systems on there prior to having tenants secured for these properties, and they ended up getting a long-term lease with a publicly listed entity in those facilities. So that's a perfect example of investing in the front end from a developer to try and secure a tenant who wants to stay long term in a nice facility with benefits like solar. So we kind of know that there are benefits for both landlords and tenants. The first part of the equation is navigating, laying the groundwork for success, and that starts with the relationship between the landlord and the tenant. What are we both trying to get out of the scenario? So the first thing is evaluating the lease term. Righto, we're looking for a tenant, or we've got a tenant. Perhaps we've got a 5-year lease agreement with 2 5-year options. We're wanting to make sure that this tenant stays on for the long term, and we can start talking to that tenant as they come towards the end of that 5-year lease term, or we can start talking to them prior to even commencing that lease, saying, look, is it going to be more beneficial for you if we put a solar system up on this building and say you go for a 10-year first term with 1 5-year option? That's certainly a good way to get that tenant in the door for a longer period. Initiating conversations, so that starts with clear communication strategies, and again, Spinifex Energy is well placed to assist you with those conversations. We do them on the regular, where we are trying to help landlords explain the benefits of a solar system to their tenants, or trying to help tenants explain to their landlords why they want the solar system, and we can help both parties come to an agreement on who pays what, income goes where, and what is charged for what. So happy to help in that regard if there's anyone out there needing some assistance there. So we help sell the benefits to either the tenant or the landlord. We know we're going to increase the property value, so these are things that come into the mix when having these discussions. We can help estimate the cost savings to the landlord and the tenant. So that's more so, increased property value is more important to the landlord, and the cost savings are obviously more important to the tenant, but depending on the scenario we're setting up, we want to work out if there's cost savings that are going to also add some revenue to the landlord's income he gets from that property. As for what, choosing the right financing model, this is probably another video for a later stage, but there are obviously various models of purchasing a solar system, whether you are the landlord or the tenant. Outright cash purchase is obviously the first, but there are a multitude of financiers out there willing to put some asset finance towards a solar system, and again, that is both on your rental or leasing model or your loan model. The ownership structure or the financing structure is important depending on who's going to be liable for the solar system. Is it the tenant or the landlord that's paying for it? And if it is in fact the landlord that's paying for it and but the landlord doesn't want to foot up the bill, there is something called a power purchase agreement, where a third party might be the intermediary between the landlord and the tenant. The third party will pay for and own the solar system, put it on the landlord's roof. The third party will pay a rooftop lease to the landlord, and then the tenant will get sold the energy that's produced from that solar system at an agreed rate for an agreed period of time. So it's like a tripartite agreement between 3 parties in that particular financing model. Successful and unsuccessful solar agreements, solar scenarios. Look, the short answer is most commercial properties a solar system will work. There are some that will have higher benefits than others. So let's just say a significantly large electricity user might be using a couple of megawatt hours of energy a year, may be paying lower rates for electricity, and so the solar produced can be charged will need to be charged at a lower rate. So there's less benefit for both parties in those scenarios, but often still quite a lot of benefit to make it commercially viable. Probably the scenarios where it doesn't work very well are restricted roof spaces. So sometimes apartment buildings may not have a whole lot of roof space, and we do find that they're is usually enough to put a dent in your community power. So apartment building like this, 5 stories, quite a lot of community power being drawn from the site, pool heating, pool filtering. We've got a garage underneath car park with lighting, and in a scenario like this, the benefits don't necessarily allow for a third party to come in and install the solar and charge the electricity out, because there are increased costs of getting solar on a roof like this. 5 stories up, you need extensive craneage, edge protection. There's the cost of the asset up front is higher, benefits are lower, can still work but not in an ideal scenario. Industrial complexes and larger warehouses are obviously a prime example of where it can work very well. You know, you've got enormous amounts of roof space, you can generally always fit enough solar on these roofs to cover the daytime loads, or at least a good portion of them for the businesses that are in them, and relatively quick and simple installs that don't factor in increased costs of installs. So look, I can talk about this for days, but I think at this stage gives you guys a quick rundown on the benefits and the ability for landlords and tenants to benefit from a commercial solar system. Again, reach out to Spinifex Energy if you've got any queries around this, or want to have a chat about any sites that you're thinking of. All the best.